Good evening, folks.
Yo,
We're back, Sansa West.
Sands West. West is
Uh,
in
yeah,
Mexico. Mexico.
undisclosed location,
Oh, okay.
somewhere down there. Yeah,
Somewhere
yeah,
in Aldhani.
somewhere. But
Excellent.
tonight we're unpacking Andor episode 6, The Eye.
Oh
And even
yeah,
though he's away, he did send us some clips, so he will be here with us in spirit.
excellent. I hope he's dressed like a force ghost.
Well, he's technically, I don't know if he's fully clothed, but he's at least in a pool.
Excellent.
So
Po-
he's wearing a
Polynesian
hat. I know
spa.
that much. Yeah, there you go. Um, Opening thoughts on this one. What did you think?
Oh, so definitely the best one so far. I can really see where they're building up in like 3 episode arcs and then crescendoing for these little acts in between. And I mean, they they did some things with tension in this episode. And we'll get there organically, but they did some things with tension at the end that I haven't felt uh since like say the trench run. Like they managed to pull off that feeling without it being another trench run or something derivative of that. The way the Star Killer base feels super derivative
Hmm.
of the trench run and even the Last Jedi walkers. I know they're supposed to be rhyming stanzas, but they just feel more derivative. And this, what you want ideally is those feelings that are associated with that, with something fresh and visual. And we certainly that got knocked right out of the ballpark this week.
Yeah. I can't get over how fast they were cutting back and forth in this episode. Like it shift
Mm.
gears constantly, but not in a manner that kind of drags you out of it. It's like you're getting with each tick of the clock the whole story all at once.
Yeah, nice rapid fire storytelling and
Yeah.
nice little pauses too in the middle of it to like just ground you in the humanness of all the characters too. Just suddenly they're all, pause in the action. Let's talk about our feelings for a second, but not in any way
Yeah.
that felt like, oh, they're talking about their feelings. Like
Yeah. It
just
wasn't a slowdown.
yeah, real organic stuff. Really well
Yeah.
written. I have to admit, really well written.
Yeah. We do have Wes's first postcard, which is applicable here. So let's run that.
All right, Wes.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Wes here for Fandom Power. It's a quiet afternoon here in vacation land at my undisclosed location here, somewhere in the Caribbean. Um, I wanted to leave some thoughts about the latest episode of Andor. It's The Eye. We're at the halfway point of the series now, and it's taken us this long to get to the heist, and man, they pulled it off. Um, I don't think there was any surprise there that they weren't going to pull it off. I think it's surprising at the casualties sustained during this one. I'd mentioned last week we didn't really know the motivations for everybody, which I found really interesting. That we got a couple more this time. We learned that Terriman was a stormtrooper. Sorry, Finn, you weren't the first stormtrooper turned rebel. So that was cool. And then Cinta being her entire family, of course, slaughtered by stormtroopers. So interesting arc for her, especially when we get that confirmation. Skeen gave us a line last week that said, she was kind of the hardest, coldest, might be the toughest one there, and she proves that in spades when she point blank, straight up murders the Imperial engineer Colonel. Oh my lord, can't think of his name. Pettigard, Colonel Pettigard. Colonel doesn't matter because he's no more.
There you go. We'll check in with Wes again a little bit later. But for now, should we get to it?
Let's do it.
All right. So this week's episode is titled The Eye,
Oh
has a
yeah.
runtime of 54 minutes with intros and credits. or around 44 minutes and 40 seconds without. Uh, Susanna White is back in the director's chair again this week, and Dan Gilroy is also returning as writer.
Fantastic. They keep getting longer and feeling shorter, if that makes
It
sense.
does, really does. We open this week's episode on a moody looking Cassian, and he's sitting near the rest of the team atop the fog covered hill. Nemec pours out 2 cups of what we can probably assume is calf, or maybe a variation on that goat milk that he tried to feed him last time. But he brings one over to Cassian, and he pauses a moment, but he accepts it. And Nemec, he takes a seat next to him and relays, I couldn't sleep. And Cassian tells him, don't worry, that's natural. But he insists, I got to be at my best. And Cassian, he reassures him, like, once the excitement kicks in, you'll be good to go. And Nemec, he goes on to ask, why won't my faith help me with this? Like, it won't help calm me. And he looks at
Mm,
Cassian and he's like, I can't sleep. Well, you're like sleeping like a rock, and you don't believe in anything. Figuring, just mercenary dude, right?
right.
But Nemec goes on to tells him, when I can't sleep, I write. And last night I wrote about you. Well, not you specifically, but like the use of or the role of mercenaries in the galactic struggle for freedom.
It's awesome.
And his conclusion is simple: the Empire has no moral boundaries, so the rebellion must use whatever assets or tools they have at their disposal, and let them see how an insurgency adapts. Sorry.
Yeah, this is an excellent example of that. Like sort of like when you get a veteran and a rookie, and you get it in certainly in real life in the military, but you also get it. It's that war movie trope or that the cop sort of under siege trope, but it works perfectly because while Nemec thinks that it's faith based, his nerves and stuff, it's not a lack of faith. It's a lack of experience. Uh,
Yeah.
no faith doesn't necessarily preclude nerves
Yeah.
or no nerves, but certainly uh, this is not Cassian's first op. Like,
No.
he it might be his first heist in terms of this, but he's definitely uh, played this game many many times before. Uh,
Yeah.
might even be the coolest sort of head of the lot when several times several of the characters in this episode almost flat panic.
Yeah. Yeah. We see that on a few of them. Um, but here, Cassian, he tells Nemec, "You're half right," and he goes on to say that the Empire doesn't play by the rules. And Nemec, he questions him, "Well, what do you mean I'm half wrong?" And he says, "The Empire doesn't care to learn." And he says, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "They don't have to. They don't care about people like you. You
No,
don't matter to them."
no, that's the
And
that's the stark reality. The machine is
oh,
so big.
that
Uh,
one little person doesn't matter in the grand scheme to them.
they can't, and it's just like the line from the trailer. Or even I think it was the third episode. Um, they can't conceive of a you know of a snub fighter blowing up an exhaust port. It doesn't
Yeah,
even enter the radar.
yeah,
Why would that be a threat to this machine?
yeah. And Namek, goes on to say, maybe they'll think differently tomorrow after everything happens. And Cassian, he's like, "Be careful what you wish for." And
Yeah. Do you think
Namek
that
is,
meant that, like, because you go on a list, like, you know what I
well,
mean? Like, if you suddenly are a successful rebel, suddenly you're Harrison Dula, and Thrawn
yeah,
knows exactly who you are and
yeah,
studies you. So rather than like Cassian, who's a nobody, completely under the radar. I wonder
yeah.
if it speaks to that.
I think so. Like Namek not knowing exactly what's going to happen, thinking, maybe they'll take me seriously once we do this type thing. But it's
Mm.
like, you don't want them that. You don't want that target on you.
No, no, no,
No,
not individually for sure.
no. But Nemec questions Clem if he thinks it's all hopeless, that they should just, sit back and accept what's being given to them and be thankful for it. And Cassian, he leans in real close. He says, "Do I look thankful?" And he's like, "No, but I'm glad you're here all the same. So Cassian, once again, he tells him, don't worry, assuring him you'll be fine and you'll be able to sleep when it's done.
Mm.
But is it the sleep that he thinks he's going to get?
No.
No. Also, to point out here, Nemec, our boy here, is wearing the red hat, unfortunately.
Well, there you go.
I
I
don't know
never
if that's a
really.
nod or not.
It might.
But,
It might be. It certainly. It works.
yep. But over at the garrison, we see troops stand and watch on an outpost, and we hear a voiceover coming from Commandant Jehold Bihaz, and he's in the middle of explaining to Colonel Pettigar that the whole situation with the Aldhani people, and he goes on to tell them that they've made great progress in controlling them by offering them choices, which in the end are things they didn't ask for in the beginning. And we intercut with scenes of the Aldhani people making their way to the temple,
Mm.
and the commandant, he goes further, telling them, there used to be upwards of 15,000 of them that would make the trek, but after last night's count, he turns around and asks Lieutenant Gorn, and he tells him we're down to around 60. He's like, well, how did you manage that? And they're like, well, we offer them transports knowing they won't accept, and then we also put together comfort zones along the way that
Yeah.
have cheap price drink or local food, and kind of luring them away from this journey.
Right. So, in much in the same way Wes had spoken about the military drill and the realism of some of that stuff speaking to him, I had to say that this scene, um, I've never had like a hate for the Empire before, aside from the fact that they were the bad guys, and there's cool factor. Darth Vader's cool and stuff, and the story's all cool. You grew up with it, and so they're the bad guys, and you vilify them. But I never, I never found myself going, "Wow, this is just like this
Underhanded
doctrine."
tactic.
Right?
Yeah.
And being a native man, and like just having them, like the way they talk about it, they're bred with a certain set of traits that make them amenable to coercion. Uh,
Yeah.
when they're subtly saying we set up, cheap libations, what they're saying is like they set these, basically alcohol and drug traps, just like they do on reservations. I might be
Yeah.
getting political, pardon me, but nothing. Nothing really ever in Star Wars has ever sort of grabbed my heartstrings like that and made me go, "Oh yeah, let's kill these Nazis."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when Colonel Pettigar asks if do they know this is the last year that they're going to be able to access this temple?
Mm.
Uh, Bihaz, he confidently replies, no, it shouldn't be a problem. We spent the last 10 years setting up an imperial viewing ceremony further down, and they'll have to be happy with that. And
It's
if they should
so
return,
much colonization overtones. It's
yeah. And
wow.
this next part is dark as hell, though, because he says if they should return, you're going to need the arms and legs for what you have planned to build.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, and that's where we see that, the that the colonizing and slave mentality. You use the weak as your workforce and strong as your military.
yeah.
And yeah, wow.
Pettigar, he turns around and asks Lieutenant Gorn his thoughts on if the Aldhani people will let them build peacefully. Apparently, my volume is low. Try turning that up a bit.
Sure.
Um, I've just been handed a note.
This just in.
Silver Screen West has chimed in with our first comment here tonight. Where is he here? Hudson's Bay Company, anyone?
Oh, I know. I know. And honestly, Wes, when Lauren did my ancestry, and when certain things about my past were discovered, my actual parentage and stuff, and that's exactly where my ancestors came into the country, as half of them working for the Hudson's Bay Company or fur traders of that ilk, and the other half being like uh, consorts, if you will, like literally a gift from the company, so that you would have a guide and a wife and someone to provide for you while so you didn't freeze to death trying to do your job as a fur trapper. So yeah, that those overtones totally not lost on me. It's scary and real. It makes it real. Not that stormtroopers marching through towns and shooting up aliens and stuff was never real before, but this is such a level of realism, such a grounded version of totalitarianism, and that it really 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 makes me want to root for the rebels.
Yeah. Um, Pettigar, he turns and asks Lieutenant Gorn his thoughts as, do you think they'll let us build peacefully? And he says, I've been 7 years here now, and it doesn't really seem like they have a choice.
Mm.
So, his thoughts on it already, because we've seen the background info. But Behaz interjects, telling the colonel that the eye is quite the celestial event. And he replies, I'm looking forward to seeing it. And with that, the two men face out the window and finish off whatever drink they happen to be drinking.
And the in unison thing, like
Yeah.
it didn't really come off campy. It came off like
Yeah.
it worked really well. How smug they are,
Yeah.
and how
And meanwhile, he's back
self-assured.
there just kind of stewing.
Well, he's never even lying either. You notice that about Goran? He's telling the truth. He's just
Yeah.
telling it in a he's
In a
painting
way
it
that
so that right, exactly. So that
it
he's not
sounds
just
proper to them.
right, bull-faced lying. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Let's see here. Our commandant is played by Stanley Townsend. So unfortunately, it's not a young version of Carson Teva, as Wes had speculated on the trailer breakdown. But Stanley here, he's done a variety of roles, uh, wide variety of films such as Mystics, The Libertine, and a ton of voice work for video games such as World of Warcraft, Cars 2, and Mass Effect Andromeda.
Crazy.
Yeah. Colonel Pettigar, on the other hand, is played by Richard Katz, who you may know from roles in Rome, Enigma, or as the one-legged prisoner in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Nice.
So Rocket, go and get that leg.
Rocket, come and get that leg.
Later on, we find the commandant and holy crap, what happened here? There we go. The commandant and Lieutenant Gorn exit the base, and he leans in and says, what's your take on him? And Gorn says, you're not going to sweet talk him. He's an engineer. And the commandant's like, well, not for lack of trying. But then he says, is everything good for tonight? And he says, yes. And he says, it needs to be perfect. And again, he yells at him, perfect. Let that word ring in your ears.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he walks off to do something. But we catch it with the
Rebels.
Terriman. Yeah, the rebels. We catch up with Terriman, and he's on a radio sending out a signal, Echo 1.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, this call sign is not new. It's been used before. Evelyn Yob, a pilot in the Naboo star system for the Space Fighter Corps, served as Echo 1 prior to the invasion of Naboo.
Oh, wow.
She first appeared in the short story The Starfighter Trap, which was in Star Wars Gamer magazine, issue 1.
Wow, that's a nice grab. That's a deep cut.
Yeah. Not receiving a response, Nemec suggests, go up 10. Like, I guess they're cycling through channels or something.
That's awesome. Yeah, old tech, like tech that we can relate to. Suddenly we're at that sort of Battlestar Galactica level of realism, where there's a phone on the wall of a starship. I love it.
Cassian, he asks, is it broken? And Nemec says, no, it's a field comm. It's just a battle radio. And he says, it looks kind of imperial. But Skeen, he bluntly states, not anymore.
Mm.
And still not getting a response. Nemec tells him, go up 3 more. And when Cassian again asks if it's working, Nemec tells him once it locks on, it'll continue to work long after we fry the place.
Nice.
But both Nemec and Tamarin, they're standing there and they give a smile. And finally, the answer comes through Valley 1. We cut across the lake and we find a little rock outcropping, I guess.
Mm.
And inside, we find Vel and Cinta. And with their transmission of Valley 1 confirmed, both them and the Echo team lock the signal. And they wish each other safe travels. And, off on their next phase of the mission, the rebel men, they take down the mountain in their Aldhani disguises. And Skeen, he kind of falls behind with Cassian. And Cassian remarks, Tamarin, he likes giving orders, doesn't he? And Skeen says, you don't know? And he says, what? And he's that Taraman used to be a stormtrooper.
Right.
Says, oh. And then he says, well, you should have been here when Cinta found out because they slaughtered her whole family.
Crazy. That's
so
like that. What a dynamic too. Just
Yeah.
like, and that's what I meant earlier when I said like they pause for moments to just get real human and not pull you out of the story to do it, where they're having like they're sharing feelings and conversation and it feels organic. And so now I guess we have sort of Finn's spiritual ancestor.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but thinking to myself, have I ever heard a stormtrooper with a British accent? And I can't nail one down, like not in canon at any rate, like not on screen in a live action property. And I need somebody to put that filter over his voice for me just so I can hear it.
But he turns around, he sees them kind of gabbing, and he barks again at them, hurry up. And I get the impression that maybe he was like a higher ranking stormtrooper.
Right. Yeah,
He's
exactly.
like right at home giving orders.
Yeah, fully. Yeah. And I mean, you get that sense that the average stormtrooper is telling the citizens, move along, get moving.
Yeah.
But he's a
Tighten
leader.
up,
He's got
it.
right. He's definitely got command training, squad training. Yeah.
Back at the rocks, we find Vel and Cinta. They unbundle a torpedo-like device, and it basically looks like a repainted underwater scooter.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And as one of the first visible signs of the eye streaks overhead, it's pretty loud too. Like not just a quiet little thing.
Hmm.
On the garrison, we find that Colonel Pettigrew, he's out there looking through a survey scope trying to catch a glimpse of the same thing. And when Lieutenant Gorn comes down, he says, has it started? And Gore tells him that the locals believe it never ends. So, yes, it has started.
Yeah. Again, with the honesty, the veiled honesty. It's fantastic. Yeah.
And
I like Gorn a lot, actually.
Yeah, little by little, he reveals like he knows so much about the Aldhani people.
Right,
that
right.
Like the commandant can't even be bothered to learn.
No.
Kind of echoing what Cassian told Nemec earlier, right? Over the comms, one of the outlying corporals from the low road unit radios in, the guests are starting to arrive, and Gorn instructs him, they should have a peaceful welcome. And the corporal acknowledges this, and the Donnies begin to pass through the station troops. As the pilgrims continue their journey, we get a voiceover from Tamarin telling the other ones to tighten up. And remember, the locals hate Imperials. And they're not to engage. If they meet other troops, they'll be from Alkenzi. But if they meet people from Alkenzi, they'll be from the garrison.
Yeah, therein lies the rub. That's perfect, actually. Yeah, therein lies the rub. It's really good.
Now, fully decked out in their Imperial disguises, they wait for the Aldanis to pass by.
essentially the mud trooper uniforms minus the helmets and the capes, eh?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
But back at the reservoir hideout, Val and Cinta, they're making last minute preparations when Cinta stops her. And you look through the rock, and there's like a little squad of troops walking up.
Mm.
And quickly and quietly, they push back against the rocks. And we cut again back over to the pass where now the Aldhanis are passing through the rebel troops in disguise.
Did you get the sense that one of these soldiers was taking a pee here?
Yes, I did. I got that
Yeah,
very much.
so did I. So now we've sort of brought another. We've got hard swearing, we've got sex scenes, we've got um, the child getting shot and stuff,
Yep.
and smoking, and now we have it's very
Public
human. These
urination.
right public urination. Um, it doesn't bother me as much as it was before because now I guess I've gotten a flavor for what they're going for,
Yeah.
and there is a thing in this episode that drove me around the bend, and we'll get there shortly, actually.
All right. But back at the reservoir, one of these troops splits off from the group and edges closer to the rock. And you'd think he would notice two people sitting in there, but instead,
Hmm.
uh, he just kind of begins to relieve himself next to their position.
It's
And the look on
exactly
their faces is priceless. It's like, oh
yeah.
God.
Yeah, and they just keep finding ways to make these guys feel more like scumbags and more like
Yeah.
scumbags.
Yeah. So the two women, they swap a tense look, and then the soldiers hoot that here comes another one. And we get another meteorite striking by. And we cut back again real quick to the valley floor. And this one catches Skeen's eye, and he
Mm.
breaks his silence. He's like, "Oh, look at that!"
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be quite. They do a good job of letting you know, like even early on, like this is nothing yet. It hasn't gotten dark yet, but
Yeah,
it's everybody
mhm,
can't help but notice.
yeah. It's so out of the
Cassian's pretty
ordinary.
good at like staying very steely faced.
Yes, he is. Quickly cutting back on the valley floor, he breaks his silence when he catches a streak. But then we cut back again over to the rocks, and none the wiser, the soldier he decides to head back to base with the rest of them. So they go completely undetected. And our four male rebels, they just kind of fall in step behind the Aldhani people,
Hmm.
continuing to escort them up the pathway. Um, I should point out here that the advice from last week has kind of been abandoned, where
the
they're holding their rifles just every which way. But
Yeah, there's a point. I don't know if you caught it. I mentioned it in the chat though. They snapped to attention in one scene. I couldn't tell you exactly which scene it is, but I think it's Terriman and Cass. They bang rifle no like tips of their rifle barrels.
yeah,
they actually make contact in a scene when I was like, wow, that's some sloppy parade, boys.
yeah. Back inside the garrison, the commandant is struggling with his belt, and we see him fiddling with it in front of his mirror. And he calls over to his wife, Roboda, who is currently dressing their son, Leonard.
Mm,
And he postures that my uniform was stored incorrectly. It's all compressed. And
right,
she looks at him like, maybe you've expanded a little bit.
right. And again, just hammering home the fact that like even if they were soldiers at one point, the brass has grown
Yeah,
fat and like not just physically, but like even
yeah,
mentally, like there's there's no threat to them. There's no reason for them to just not walk around like they own the entire
yeah,
galaxy.
yeah. But looking at his son, he kind of brushes past his wife and says, where's your imperial blouse? And the son's like, I'm not wearing that. And he's like, you'll do what you're told. But then he's like, Mom, I don't feel so good. And she takes his temperature, and he looks at her, he's like, he's always sick. Why is he always sick? And then he plays it up. Look, you're the one that wants to get transferred out of this place. If you want it to happen, it's going to be Colonel Pettigrew that makes it happen.
Hmm.
So everything has to be perfect. And for one night, you can suck it up and do this.
Mm.
So he turns to attend to his uniform, and Rabota, she gives a little kiss to his head, like kind of feels like it's them against him at this point.
Yeah, and he makes a comment here where he's like, "You'll feel the back of my hand."
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's not above giving the
Corporal
kid a
punishment.
smack, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here. The role of Rabota Bizas is played by Michelle Duncan. She has the role of false Marissa in the Amazon Prime original Hannah.
Mm-hmm.
She played Shelley Stern in Bohemian Rhapsody,
Okay.
and the wife in a short film titled, get this one, Sucking is a Fine Quality in Women and Vacuum Cleaners.
That's a good wow.
Yeah, that one's
Wow.
directed by Nina Bradley. Just a little
Let's
short
talk
film
about
she's
that off
done.
camera, I guess. That feels like a trap.
Might be. Our little Leonard Behas, though, is played by Alfie Todd, and you may know him from previous roles as Ben in the HBO original His Dark Materials, Edward Seymour in the show Becoming Elizabeth,
Okay.
and more recently as Willem Blackwood in House of the Dragon.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so he's got some stuff going on right now.
Very well. Good, good.
Back outside at the armed pillbox, Gorn and some soldiers await as another group marches in. And following this group, the Donnies make their way as well, with the chieftain in front and followed by our four rebel friends. The other soldiers that the other soldiers shoot him a glance as they approach, and Gore, he compliments the chief that, you look well for such a long journey.
Mm.
And the chief bluntly replies, may the eye stay open long enough to find some good within you.
Yeah.
So no love there. And then behind him, some of the other Donnies, they give a quick glance like, oh, is he really egging on the Imperial dudes? But without further conversation, Gorn instructs the soldiers, let them pass. And the chief, he kind of raises his stick up and leads on like all triumphant.
Yes.
So he begins to move off to his destination, and our four rebels fall in step behind and escort them forward. Our chieftain is played by Scottish actor David Heyman. He's been around quite a while,
Mm-hmm.
with roles in such as Pavel in The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, played Malcolm in Sid and Nancy,
Okay.
and he also played Lennox in the 2015 adaptation of Macbeth.
Oh, crazy.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I've seen him before in a few things.
yeah, he's been around quite a while.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, Vel is using an ocular device to scan for soldiers on top of the parapet. And I'm pretty sure this particular unit is a repurposed Bell and Howell video camera.
Yeah. Nice, nice,
It's got the
nice.
same lines and the same style lens, but
It does have the same lens. Yeah. They
yeah,
just sort of turn it sideways.
yeah.
That's great.
But Vel, she tells Sin to get ready, and she hears two more meteors coming. Back at the temple, our four rebels, they stand watch with the other Imperial soldiers, and the pilgrims begin to surround their sacred site. Two more meteors streak by overhead, and as they do, across the reservoir, Vel and Cinta, they grab their torpedo-like tube and move out. Back at the temple, another meteor shoots across, and Nemec turns to Cassian and tells him, "You were right. I'm not tired at all." Gives him a little smile, but then Dameron, he barks at them, tighten up.
Yep.
And just as that happens, Gorn, he tells squads 1, 2, and 4, "You're going to remain here at the temple all night, so get comfortable." And then he motions to Squad 3, which is our rebels, and says, "You stand by, as you'll be joining the return escort for the Commandant and his family."
Perfect.
He turns to address all the troops, and he's speaking at this point like the Aldhanis aren't even there. And he's like, if you don't bother them, they won't bother you.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, he instructs the rebels to march up further and motions to a spot on the hill saying, "Wait here." And again, I wish Wes was here to weigh in on the rifle position,
Yeah.
because they're like pointing every which way at this point.
Yeah, they are. I think this is actually the scene where when they stop marching, they bang barrels here. Yeah.
Underwater, we get to see a silhouette of Val and Cinta as they shoot across, and we get to see like meteors streaking across above them too.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty
it
cool scene.
provides quite the nice visual.
So, and now
And
we have like basically this is one of the tried and true ways of getting into an Imperial facility.
yeah,
Jedi Fallen Order, the Obi-Wan series. I think Starkiller might have done it too. And now Val and Cinta. Uh, the Imperials have to stop building near water so much.
basic. It's too good a cover. But as they progress through, we get to see what might be formerly submerged or like former Aldhani structures that have
Yeah,
been like submerged and lost to the lake.
right. Because they mentioned they dammed this up.
Yeah. So who knows what they might have been. Um, Inside the commandant's quarters, though, Lieutenant Gorn enters with a fur pelt, asking, "Are you guys ready?" And Jayhold remarks, "We've been trading goat hides with them for a 3-year lease on the land. And if
Mm,
they didn't smell so badly, it would almost be amusing." Um, Gesturing to his wife and son, he's like, "Get ready." And he goes on to tell Pettigar that the Donnies have a rough appetite for fragrance. But Pettigar, he replies, "I've already been warned." So again, with that smell of the locals thing.
right, exactly. Yeah, and just the despicable nature of
Yeah,
the Imperial brass.
yeah. And it gets worse too, because as J-Hole goes on, he says, after a bit of ceremonial nonsense, we can tuck into a fine table. And he, under his breath, he mutters, "above the stench."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And Pettigar, as he's exiting there, he gives the goat hide a sniff too, and follows him out the door, falling in step. Outside, Tamarin checks his earpiece, and Skeen questions, has she checked in yet? And Cassian, he asks, "Is there a problem?" But Tamarin assures him she'll be there. And on the parapet, we see 3 soldiers running, and Corporal Kimsey, he leans out and he's like, "It's the wrong time to be screwing up." And one of the running soldiers tells him they were supposed to call us. And he's like, "When will you guys learn?"
Right.
And the soldier calls back, "We were waiting." And Kimsey, he starts chirping more and mocking them, and, mocking their answer.
Right.
Uh, but the troops continue to run on. And with the last one passed, he gives one more, "Don't let Gorn catch you." And then he returns inside the communications bunker. And with the dam now silent, Cinta and Val, they make their way up on top. Meanwhile, Gorn leads the entourage down towards the temple, and they stop as Commandant Beezus eyes up the 4 rebels. He's only there for a moment briefly, questioning if they're from Alkenzi, and Gorn confirms this. So he studies them a moment longer and turns his gaze down towards the chieftain. He then tells Gorn, "You do the talking with the Donnies," and they continue down the hill.
Hmm. Yeah, he
And
doesn't even
then,
want to do his own dirty work.
no, so he needs Gorn to speak because it's like he doesn't even know the language.
Mm.
But that'll come up here in a second, too, right? Um, Back on the parapet, though, Val and Cinta quickly ditch their aquatic gear and prepare for the next step.
Okay, this is the part that drove me over the bend.
Okay.
No zippers in Star Wars. They completely, both of them unzip scuba suits
They
and
did.
then unzip their boots and get I I don't know why that bothers me so much, but there's one rule. There's actually 2 rules, and they actually blew the other rule in terms of costuming in like episode 2 when we can see geez, it was
Underwear.
so yeah, a bra through a top. I can't remember the character's name anymore. It's been so long since we've
Bix
been back
Clan.
on. That's right, Bix, and since we were back on Ferrix. But so now we broke the 2 sort of like George Lucas's rules on how Star Wars should be sort of aesthetic. So, um, do 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 any of those rules count anymore? I guess what I'm getting at. Do Our future generations of Star Wars people no longer need to adhere to that, and therefore, and it's a small thing. it's a small thing, but when you hear about it and you start to look and you go, wow, they've crafted 11 films, and I guess this is the third TV show. Um, and they did
Fourth,
99 point
TV show.
fourth TV show. They did 99.99% of that without underwear and zippers.
Yeah.
And I what and so and we talked about in the last one too how they got rid of the snap cuts in Obi-Wan, or sort of the transitions. They use them very sparingly.
Yeah.
And are we steering away, and this might be something to explore in the group, or if you guys at home have any thoughts at all, are we steering away from the language of Star Wars at all? And if we are, does it bother anybody else? uh Not that I didn't enjoy this, not that it's a minor thing, and I don't think I'm not going to pick the thread and run with it, and but it's sort of a big deal to me in terms of the uh if we have a set of rules,
Yeah.
and therefore a set of sort of a visual language that we use as a basis for this, which George Lucas set down. And my question to you and to the fans of our show is, um have we canonized the ability to use original storytelling language whenever we want? And is that going to do a disservice to Star Wars moving forward, or is it just a free for all and we just get what we get and we enjoy it? Having said which, I really enjoyed the whole episode as a whole. So
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I think it's going to be up to the creators going forward, like what they want to do, like
right.
how faithful to the original stuff they want to be and how much they want to break away from it. But I guess that's going to happen as they kind of like, give them
Well,
more leeway.
that's true, and we are spreading. We're going wide afield, if you will. Like
Yeah. It's no
um,
longer just, Filoni and
that's
Favreau.
that's right. And I wonder if there's if the story group, um, like so like in the Marvel universe we have like the story group for the comics, which their editing teams are usually pretty tight knit, and then you have the story group certainly for the MCU, and they talk to each other and cross over and try to help each other meld it in. But do we think that there's a big you know the
I
cinematic
guess
Star Wars? Is there a story group that's involved with that the same way it's involved with the comics? And it's like
I
I
would
get
hope so.
I get the feeling like I'm all over Pablo Hidalgo's Twitter, but I get the feeling that Dave and John might be the sort of spiritual successors to George Lucas. And what does that mean to a head of a story group?
Yeah.
Uh, I'm going off on a tangent. Let's get back to
Yeah,
the heist.
it's all good. So again, we're going to cut back, and in the valley, the chieftain tells Gorn and company, you may enter the temple, and he wishes peace to those who come in peace. And concerned now, Nemec remarks, "Where is she? She's late." And they still haven't heard from Vel, but
Mhm.
up on the dam, she's busy activating a piece of equipment, and she attaches it to a junction box just outside the comms bunker. And completely unaware, Kimsey, he doesn't see anything as she's running down towards Cinta. And for a second, she kind of leans over the rail because it's fairly steep there.
Yeah.
And Cinta's like, get down. But she takes position there. And down below, we get the first part of the ceremony here as Leonard, he hands to the commandant the goat hide, and he passes it to the chief. The chief accepts it, passes it off. And for some reason, she passes him one. And then he gives it back to the commandant. So I thought they were like bargaining for leases, but I guess it's like a ceremonial passing. We'll give you one, you give us one.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, but the commandant, he passes the new one back to Leonard, and with that, their goat hide trading ceremony is complete, and they only have a bit more to get through. above though, Cinta, she's hooking on some lines, and we get a little bit of anxiety, I guess, on Vel's face. She's not really. I guess she's second guessing at this point.
Right. Yeah.
And we hear over the comms, Echo 1, Echo 1, what are you doing? And Cinta kind of looks at her and grounds her. And in something, I don't know if they really should have done this, but all four of them kind of like stare up right at her position. It's like, you wouldn't want to give her away, but
No, it's very true.
but
I think there's a lot on her plate here, and despite the fact that everyone's listening to her and she seems like a battle-hardened sort of, you know, you begin to see like how often has she done this?
yeah,
This could be a couple of these people could be their first sort of crack at something this
oh,
big for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like this is the literal point of no return.
Right. Absolutely.
Like as soon as she says it, it's go time, which she does. Um, yeah. Where am I at here? There it is. Uh, Vela answers, are you guys on point? And they confirm that they are. And Tamarin asks, are we a go? And she hesitates again. But
Hmm.
Cinta snaps her out of it. And she finally looks up and, like, go, we're a go. So Cassian looking downwards towards the ceremony as it continues. The chieftain, he says to Gorn, tell Jayhold that their ghosts have strong hands and long memories.
Hmm.
And here's the weird part because Gorn doesn't repeat it.
No.
Instead, he tells Bihaz, the chieftain said, may the eye find the good in all of us. And the chieftain looks at Gorn like, I get the impression he knows what he just said.
Yeah, yeah, like there's
It's
some
like, that's not what
rudimentary.
I told you to say.
Right, he's speaking a
But
little bit of common there.
yeah.
Galactic basic.
So Jayhold, he tells Gorn, tell them we'll give them the gift of our absence and be on our way. And with that, the chieftain, he eyes the commandant and kind of gives him a mildly contemptuous look. But above, Vel and Cinta, they strap on their packs just as another meteor flies overhead. And with that distraction, both of them dive over the rail and descend down into the shadowy alcove.
Mission Impossible style.
Yeah. With the ceremonial exchange finished, Jayhold and company began to walk back up to the dam, and Gorn tells Tamarin and company fall in, which they do. So this part here further says to me, just how much hate there is there.
Hmm.
Because some of the pilgrims, they're admiring this brand new goat hide, but the chief, he grabs it and strolls down towards the bonfire and fires it in.
That's right. Yeah,
It's like, to hell with your offer.
that's right. Utter disrespect. Yeah, he's just humoring them. I mean, it seemed that it's going both ways. They're
Yeah,
both sort of humoring each other. Um, you know, you get the impression that this is a backwater sort of outpost. They might be wanting to do something better with it. Certainly, the Alcanzi Air Base is a little larger animal. We don't get to see that much, but um, it's this is a weird tactic for them to and colonize. Where like we've certainly seen the Empire just completely wipe out civilizations.
yeah,
Um, so that they're trying to like they said, trying to procure some sort of labor for some sort of big build in the future.
yeah. Now, did they tell us before that, like, the significance of Aldhani? Was it just strategic position, or was there
Yeah, it didn't.
resources they needed?
She said something about it being um, close enough, far enough away from everything that nobody really took notice of it, but close enough to everything that it was a perfect transition sort of hub. It's in that swing position of worlds in the galaxy.
Yeah. So our four rebel troops, they fall in step and march up the hill, and they're all making their way up. And there's a sentry, and Gorn, he kind of rushes ahead and tells this sentry, take point and lead your men down the road. There's to be no one up here without my permission.
Hmm.
And inside, a guard, he's kind of like slacking off, sitting by the door, and he jumps up to attention as the group enters. And the commandant, he's just kind of blabbering on and tells the colonel, it'll be easy going forward without the exchange of skins. And he writes it off as no big loss, citing that there's not much Aldhani civilization has contributed worth forgetting in the past.
Right.
And like the plan said, last man in, Clem hits the door lock. So it's about to kick off.
Yes, sir.
Completely oblivious to what's about to happen, the commandant continues to move forward. But Tamarin, he takes aim with the guard at the door and, orders him on the ground. And Jayhold starts barking, what is the meaning of this? But Skeen and the rest instruct them all, get down. And as Nemec moves into position, Colonel Pettigar, he pulls a pistol on him and tells him stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, let the boy go. But pleading, Rabota, she calls out to Jayhold, what's going on? And again, he gets a little bit more forceful, let the boy go. And Cassian from behind him says, nobody has to die here.
Right.
But as that happens, a shot rings out, and by reaction, Pettigar fires and misses Nemec. But we see that it's Cinta who has just shot the colonel, and Cinta and Vel step out of the shadows. Outside, though, we see Gorn, who's kind of got an ear cocked listening.
Mm-hmm.
And when the sentry's like, is everything good? He's like, yep, all good.
Mm-hmm.
Back inside, though, Jayhold, he still thinks he's in control. And he tells Tamarin, you'll never get away with this, but he catches a backhand for his comment. So kind of gets a taste of his own medicine that he was going to give the kid earlier. The elevator doors, they open up, and Clem, he goes in and clears it. But back outside, the chieftain, he's throwing fuel on the fire within the temple. And we're cutting back and forth really quick now.
Yeah.
Tamarin, he shoves the commandant into the elevator, and Vel tells him, do everything they say. When he asks what they want, she tells him, we'll take them, or you will take us to the payroll vault. And he blurts out, that's insane. But she coldly tells him, or we'll die together.
Mm-hmm.
He tries to tell him, it won't work. The code comes in remotely from Alkenzi. And the rebels, they're like, we already know how it works. We know we need your handprint to trigger it. And maybe you'd prefer we just take the hand instead. And in a truly hard-ass display, she tells him, one path, one choice. We win or everyone dies.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
It's the shades of sort of Rogue One, but much grimmer.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. And as the door of the elevator closes, Rabota, she begs one more time, just do what they ask. Up on the parapet, though, we see that device that Val had planted earlier, and it's gone from blinking to solid lights, implying that some sort of signal block has gone in. And inside the comms bunker, Kimsey, he's, trying unsuccessfully to access the comms. And we shift down to the viewing room where two waiting attendants have trays of drinks and whatnot prepared. And as the door opens, they're like ready to serve, but instead they're met with rifles. And
put it down.
Yeah.
Put it down.
In comes the commandant at gunpoint, flanked by Clem and Terriman. And he quickly secures the two attendants while Clem continues on into the control room. And they have no idea either, but they soon realize, they're at gunpoint. So he orders them away from the controls. And outside Gorn, he checks his wrist chrono. I got a kick out of that.
Yes.
Can't just say watch.
Nope.
But, he glances up at the control tower, and back inside the basement level, Vel, she's ushering the other hostages by gunpoint into the elevator as well. And in the comms bunker, Kimsey, he's still trying to get something to work, but no effect. And out on the valley floor, the pilgrims, they start to chant and celebrate. So their portion of the festival is really kicking in. Back in the control room, Nemec gives one last rundown of the control panel to Cinta, And Vel tells J-Hold, if you fail to cooperate, your family will die.
Mhm.
If you stall us or slow us down, your family will die. And he scoffs and says, you'll kill us all anyway, right? But she shuts him down, saying, because that's what you would do, right? No, if we get what we came for, everyone walks away. But
Mhm.
if we go down, you're right there with us. And with that, they load some hostages and the commandant back in the elevator. And Vel, she puts her hand on Cinta's and she looks at her and says, tell me you'll be all right. And, Cinta tells her, I'll be fine. But they linger in each other's stare a moment before Cinta finally says, go.
Right.
So if we needed more confirmation, there it is.
There it is.
But out on the parapet, Kimsey, he calls down to another trooper about the comms. And he says the line to Alkenzie's still working, but it's probably just a result of the eye. And seeing as this thing happens like every 3 years or so,
Mhm.
you'd think it would have happened 3 years prior, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But
Maybe the corporal's newish.
yeah. Below, the elevator doors open and Vel sends Clem out first, which I think is kind of like, he's the expendable one. Send him
That's right.
first.
So there was a thing here I noticed too. So she says his name, Clem. Clem, you go first. She says the
Yeah.
name right in front of everybody. And I was like, wait, that's like heist 101. No. And then a few seconds from now, Terriman like says Vel's name, and then
Yep.
it occurred to me, those like Terriman's not that guy's name, and
No.
Nemec's not that kid's name, and Vel's not her name. The first thing that Lucian does is tell Cassian to pick a name.
Yeah.
So that it occurred to me then that the names, it's just like Mr. Pink and Mr.
Yep.
Purple. um, they can openly say those names because they're all pseudonyms. So we don't
Yeah.
actually know these characters at all.
Yeah. But as they continue down the corridor, making their way towards the depot, inside we find some depot guards that are sitting around the table playing what looks like a variation on dominoes.
Mm,
The descriptive audio calls it cards, but I don't know. I think it's
yeah,
more domino like.
yeah. It's they seem to have more like the guards on the in the, you can hear them talking about hexes and two
Yeah.
hexes and one hex, and they're definitely more hexagonal shaped, like a TIE fighter wing
Yeah.
than a sabacc card, which is like
Yes.
fewer sides.
Yeah.
Might be some kind of
Yeah.
derivation.
There's got to be more than one game in the galaxy.
Yeah, heck yeah, yeah.
But the male rebels escort the commandant into the depot, and Vel comes in hidden behind them. And Tamarin, he barks that this is commandant inspection and orders the men to line up. And as soon as they're in line, the rifles go up and the rebels move into position. And J-Hold now, he kind of beckons the men cooperate before Vel shoves him forward towards the vault.
Hmm.
And Skeen threateningly asks the hostages, if anyone doesn't want to hustle for the next 10 minutes, raise your hand.
Yeah.
So he's not playing. Cassian rushes aboard the freighter and starts to power it up. And Nemec, he starts adjusting his navigation device. Then outside, we see the Donnies, they're continuing to celebrate. And again, we cut back in, and Tamarin forces J-Hold's hand onto this biosensor. And with that, the gates to the vault open. And he's still trying to convince them, it doesn't work. You need a code from Alkenzie to get the straps off. But Gorn rushes in, or not Gorn, Tamarin rushes in, and he puts two little explosive devices on two different panels,
Hmm.
and they blow up, and all of a sudden the straps all release. So
Boom, boom, boom.
credits are ready. There is a little bit of Orabesh on the screen where Nemec is connecting. It's nothing earth shattering.
Mm.
It's just reg and then a call number, name, biometric ID reg.
Oh, cool.
So maybe he's bypassing some sort of biometric scanner. I don't know. With the credits now free, Skeen, he screams at the hostages, get loading. and Nemec radios up to Cinta that they've taken the vault. But somehow Corporal Kimsey has intercepted the transmission.
Right.
So he leans over and he kind of fiddles with the signal a bit to get more clearer. And he overhears them talking how Alkenzi will be calling soon. And he knows now something is terribly wrong. Outside, the pilgrims continue their celebration with chants and songs. And inside, the captive soldiers continue to load credits onto the freighter using repulsor trolleys. Even the commandant is forced at this point to start loading. And you kind of see him struggling a little bit. But up in the control tower, Alkenzi radios across that they know there's been a vault breach and they want a status report. But Cinta, instead, she just kind of turns the radio off and then in a sequence begins to shut all the lights to the base off.
Mm-hmm.
And as the lights go dark in one of the service tunnels, Lieutenant Gorn makes his way towards the vault and switches on a flashlight and continues. And up on the parapet, we find Corporal Kinsey has assembled a small squad of troops, and they're running across. And
The
like,
only
where are we
competent
going?
guy in the Empire.
Yeah, basically. But they're like, where are we going? And he's like, we're going to the vault. And they're like, but we'll miss the eye. So, you know where their
Yeah.
priorities are.
Right. Get moving.
Yeah. But back down in the vault, the rebels continue to hustle these soldiers to load it faster. And J-Hold is visibly not doing well. But back outside, the pilgrims, they're, chanting louder and louder as the chief raises his ceremonial stick up. Inside, Val calls for a time check, and Nemec answers 5-9. And I don't know if this is a mistake here, but Nemec is holding up one of those credit tubes like single-handed.
Maybe.
It's kind of strange as the rest of them, they need two soldiers to kind of sling them around.
Right.
Here's Nemec just, pawing one of them.
Maybe they have different currencies, different weights, like nickels and dimes. Maybe.
A lighter metal or something.
Hmm.
Back outside, though, two pilgrims carry a giant snuffer and place it over the fire, dousing its light. We catch up then with Corporal Kinsey as he's rushing down a stairwell. And then we cut again outside, and the Aldhani people turn away from their extinguished fire and they look towards the sky. And suddenly it starts to glow bright, and then a flurry of meteors come flying over. And this was like, really one of those spectacular visuals.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I wasn't expecting it. Like, it was really, really well done.
Yeah.
Especially I have quite a nice big TV, so yeah, it was really one of the most visually striking things in Star Wars I've seen in a long time, and like wholly original. At the same, you know what I mean? Like, so when you've done this many hours of stuff, and we've been to a desert planet 45 times, it's super refreshing to have something this original and this sort of visually striking.
Yeah. Inside, the soldiers continue to load up as Gorn enters the room, and J-Hold, he turns around, recognizing his voice, and he's shocked to see that he's part of this. And he he stops what he's doing and he approaches Gorn and he tells him, "You'll hang for this." But Gorn says, 7 years of serving you, I deserve worse for that.
Yeah, it's a great line.
Yeah. Gorn, he looks up and asks, "Are we good to go?" And Cassian, he tells him, "We are." But at the Alcairnzy Air Command, we see pilots rushing towards their TIE fighters across a catwalk, and they're suspended the same way they kind of were in Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of neat to see that.
The one pilot kind of Superman lands when they jump off the gantry too.
Yeah. In the background, there's a Lambda class shuttle sitting there. So that was a nice touch too.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get another great visual because when the pilot jumps down onto the TIE fighter, it's backlit by the glowing of the eye.
Yeah, that's the one where he does the full like superhero landing with the hand up in the air, and Miss Marvel landing, I guess.
Yeah. So back in the vault, though, one of the carts carrying credits topples over, and Gorn yells, "Just leave it." And Just as he does so, a voice yells out, "What's going on here?" And they all stop and they look up and see Kimsey arriving on the gantry with his troops.
Mhm.
And quick thinking here, Gorn, he tells them, "This is a classified operation. You're not cleared to be here." But Kimsey, he hesitates and he questions the commandant, and he doesn't respond. But Gorn looks over, and the commandant is now holding his left arm,
Right.
and it appears he's in the middle of a heart attack.
Yeah.
But Gorn looks to him to confirm, but he doesn't. So instead, Gorn yells at him again, "I'm giving you a direct order." And with that, the commandant, he keels over. And Kimsey then raises his blaster, but before he can shoot, Skeen strikes first and takes out one of the soldiers on the gantry. All hell breaks loose as the troops on the gantry open fire and the rebels take cover. But Kimsey, he takes aim and he shoots Gorn, and I think he catches him pretty close in the middle of the chest.
Yeah.
So outlook not good for him.
No.
But as he does that, Cassian returns fire and ends up planting one inside of Kimsey's chest, taking him out. And then with Nemec laying down some cover fire, Cassian moves and runs up into the flight deck, sits down in the pilot seat and ditches his rifle to try and get things going. But a soldier who was helping them load has been hiding under the stairs and takes notice. And he runs up after him and ends up putting Cassian in a chokehold.
I got like Indiana Jones vibes from that. Like,
Very much.
he's always just skin of his teeth kind of stuff. Like, loved it.
Yeah.
Actually, loved it a lot.
Back at Air or Alkenzi Air Command, the 3 TIE fighters, they lower into launch position, and we cut back again, and Skeen has laid down some fire, and we get a great shot of this soldier getting thrown off from the shot. So I don't know if that long rifle had more punch than the rest of them, but
yeah, it seemed I couldn't tell you exactly. Like, that's where Wes is excellent. But that
yes.
it seemed like Dengar's long rifle, and I'd have to go back and explore from the second episode of the Pew Pew series that we did, but it reminded me a lot of Dengar's long rifle, and I'd be surprised if it wasn't that rifle specifically.
The soldier goes flying off the platform, and Cassian, he struggles to reach his blaster. Nemec, he manages to land a shot when they roll, and it ends up killing the soldier. Vel and Skeen, they basically run after I missed a spot there. Tamarin, he tells Skeen, give me some cover fire. And as he goes out and breaks through, he ends up taking a shot and he falls. And then Skeen and Vel, they end up making it onto the ship just in time. And Cassian, he hits the button to close the door, and they look out and see Tamarin's body kind of laying there in a like in a heap.
Things have gone right sideways, and it
Yeah.
wouldn't be a sort of a Star Wars heist unless things went sideways. There's no way this was going to go perfectly, and they do such a good job of building the tension. When the natives turn the lights out on the ceremonial fire, when they put the dome over it, and all the lights get cut to the station, it's very symbolic of like it's dark now. The feces is about it's about to hit the rotary coolant device.
Yeah. It is kind of symbolic, though, his body kind of laying on all the spilled credits. Like, this is what they died for.
That's right. Yeah.
Blaster fire continues to rain down as the loading doors close, and Nemec, he sees a grim look on Skeen's face. Elsewhere, the 3 TIE fighters, they come blasting out of their ground hangar, and then back at the ship, Nemec yells, get this thing in the air. And Cassian, he engages the thrusters, and it's enough to knock down all the remaining troops inside the vault there.
Oh yeah, not only that.
But, the acceleration unfortunately causes the 3 passengers to fly backwards, and a loose trolley ends up crushing Nemec against the other pilot credits.
Oh, Wes called it, but it was hard because he made it.
Yeah, he made it. It wasn't like almost there.
Yeah, it was, and again, it's the it's the money that kills him. It's the job that kills him, not the enemy.
Yep.
It's that's tough for a poet.
But as the Rono freighter blasts out of the tunnel, the pilgrims, they kind of all jump back a little bit startled as it flies overhead. And back in
Mm.
the control room, we see the hostages still sitting there, and they get a great view of the ship leaving.
Yes.
But frantically, Val and Skeen, they work to free Nemec, and Cassian calls out, "I need a flight path." And they tell him, hold on, as Val grabs a metaspike and jams it into Nemec's chest. And once again, Cassian calls out, "I need a heading."
So I wonder if these med spikes or anything like that in the High Republic comics and uh, some of the young adult novels and stuff, they use the Jedi use these things called battle stims, and they literally like inject themselves in the chest or the thigh or whatever, and it gives them like adrenaline boost for
Yeah.
it's Roger Ramjet. They'll take the proton pill to give me the strength of 20 atom bombs for a period of 20 seconds. Um, I wonder if it's something like that because it reminded me of Pulp Fiction, suddenly
Yeah.
like, and he's going 90.
Yeah. It definitely
Yeah,
feels like an adrenaline shot.
right.
But as they fly on, the TIE fighters, they're quickly approaching. And Vel and Skeen drag Nemec onto the flight deck. And with his navigation device in hand, he tells Cassian to climb. And he's like, "Are you crazy? Look at this. Are you looking out the window?" And he's like, "Just climb."
Hmm.
And he does. And Cassian pulls back and they kind of stagger a little bit. And the TIE fighters, they're closing in and they're trying to lock on. But as they do, they start firing and the shots go wide. And Nemec tells Cassian, dive. So this clunky old freighter, they put it into a dive, and small chunks of the meteorite are kind of cracking the windshield.
Hmm.
But the TIE fighters are taking it worse. And the first one gets a little bit of an explosion going on. And then the other two kind of bank around him. And the freighter, it steers towards this little sliver in the eye and
Right.
ends up making it through into space. But the second TIE fighter ends up taking a meteor right in the wing, causing it to tailspin and crash into the third,
Just like
eliminating their threat.
just like the asteroid field, the Empire Strikes Back, where one
Yep.
fighter sort of careens into the other fighter, or the trench run. I gotta
Yep.
say, um, they didn't they didn't skimp at all on the budget in this stuff.
No.
This felt as good or better than any of the movies. Um, I was sort of worried about uh, budget constraints in terms of this show being such a long haul and already having a second season greenlit. And I know that there's somebody at a boardroom going, okay, well, this episode can't cost that much. And because, they do worry about that stuff in terms of
Yeah.
making their money back. I'm not exactly sure how streaming revenue works yet, but I've done a little bit of research. But and yes, you are going to save some money doing 3 episodes of them shepherding goats and building a plan and looking at little tiny handmade models and stuff, but they went all out on this, and it's so beautiful. I mean, this is some of the coolest TIE fighter stuff. I mean, we got a little Rono, like, it's basically a shuttlecraft, a little transport craft,
Yeah.
but this is one of the best scenes I've seen in Star Wars in a long time. And I really hope um, that the other series take note of this type of cinematic, because if
Yeah.
you dipped the Mandalorian and stuff like this, it'd be over. It would just be
Yeah.
wow.
I think we're going to get more of that with this next season of The Mandalorian just because
Hmm.
of the new ship. But
That's right. Yeah.
let's see here. Back on the surface of the planet, though, Cinta, she just basically walks off under the cover of night. And
So did you notice that she was welling up with tears?
a little bit, yeah.
So you know, I kind of got the feeling she might have killed the hostages.
I don't think so
You
because
don't
they were
think
still
so?
watching when the ship left, right?
Yeah,
They
and
were bound and gagged. There was
and
nothing they
gagged,
could do.
and she cuts later. But I don't know. The tears in her eyes aren't like, maybe they're tears of like, I'm left behind. Is it on purpose? But
It might be concern for Val's safety too, right?
yeah,
Like at this point, she has no idea who made it out on that freighter,
yeah.
and
I
it's not
just
like she can just rush back in and check.
She's the hardest one of the group, and they go out of their way to make sure she's the first one that kills somebody. That she's the the she's even skiing is like she's the badass.
Yeah,
Her whole family was wiped out by stormtroopers, and I gotta wonder, did she kill the hostages in that moment? It's just a question I have, and wonder if anybody in the audience feels the same way.
maybe. But then out on the valley floor, we get this weird moment where both the Aldhani people and all the troopers are just kind of taken in the eye,
Mm,
and it's like differences are set aside, and they're all just taking it in.
right.
And we get another great visual cinematic look at this thing. And I know Wes was questioning it in some of his comments, but again, seeing that thing, it's just kind of epic.
Oh yeah, this is fantastic visuals.
Yeah. And then back on the ship, Skeen is taking care of a now unconscious Nemec. And Vel asks, "Is he still with us?" And he replies, "Yeah, disappointed?" And Vel says, "That's not fair." But Skeen, he says, "You wanted bail on him." And Vel retorts, "He's dying." But Skeen cuts her off, saying, "You don't know that." And he tells Cassian there's a doctor built into a contingency plan near here.
Hmm.
And he continues to lay on the guilt trip, like, we're only where we are now thanks to this kid.
Yeah, he's the
And
whole reason we're here.
yeah. So, of course, Cassian, he's like, "All right, where's the doctor? We're going there."
Yeah, Cass makes the decision in the end.
Yeah. So we get to this foggy planet and we find Nemec on a table about to be operated on by this four-armed alien doctor.
Hmm.
And
It's
then
looking like a
Vel,
cross between like Ochi of Bastoon and Maz Kanata.
yeah, very much. Yeah. But Vel, she's holding up like a fluid-filled IV bag. And outside, Cassian and Skeen are kind of sitting by some long stem plants in front of the freighter. And Skeen asks Cassian, if he thinks Nemec will make it. And Cassian says, "Well, he could get lucky." And Skeen says, "Luck. It drives the whole damn galaxy, doesn't it?" But Cassian, he kind of remains silent here. And Skeen goes on to ask him, "How many credits do you think we just got away with?" And he doesn't answer again. And he says, he figures, 80 million, give or take.
Hmm.
And then he revisits the previous conversation, citing that Clem wanted to win and walk away.
Hmm.
And he puts the question to Cassian, "Well, 40 million apiece? Don't tell me you haven't thought about it." And he goes on to tell him that, "I can't fly the freighter, but I got a place to hold up, and we can both walk away rich." And finally, Cassian answer him like, "So, no rebellion for you?" But Skeen says, "Oh no, I'm a rebel, but it's me against everyone else." And then Cassian, asks, "Where would that put him?" And Skeen says, 40 million credits is enough for me to forget all about you."
Right.
And then Cassian asks, "What about your brother in the orchard?" And Skeen drops his bombshell. There is no brother. So Cassian, he postures for a moment, "Should we just leave them here?" And Skeen lays out his judgment of Cassian, and he says, "You're not here to save anyone but yourself." And he had him pegged the moment he came into camp. They're both born in the hole, and all they know is climbing over someone else to get out.
Hmm.
And Skeen, he continues on to lay it out, telling them, "There's a moon 8 parsecs away from here, and nobody's home. We could catch our breath, split up the credits." But before Skeen can get another word out, Cassian draws and fires. And Skeen, he slumps over. And Cassian kind of takes a look around to make sure, all is still calm.
Do we
So,
think
really,
this, like at first, the first few viewings, I was like, Skeen's a scumbag. He's
yeah,
willing to sell the whole farm. But then, watching it, the scene where Nemec is injured and he's stroking his cheek and holding his hand there. Do you think this is his flat panic?
maybe.
Okay,
Or was that all just a mask?
well, maybe.
Because
See,
like,
and I don't know whether the brother is whether he means here the brother was never a thing. That story's not true, or is it like I don't have a brother because he's dead?
I
Um,
take it to mean
I,
that there was never a brother to begin with.
yeah, this is very nuanced, and I'm not convinced that Cassian killed a bad guy here.
Hmm.
This is very, very nuanced. Um, Certainly, there is no question about who shot first. We can
Yeah.
put that to bed.
God damn, he's quick on that draw.
Yeah, absolutely. And on face value, he's being a scumbag. I just wonder, and we probably never get resolution because he's definitely dead.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if this idea to split this haul and get out and win is based on the fact that maybe his personal interest in it being Nemec's safety or as whatever kinship they developed over the last few months
Yeah.
has is going out the window. I got to say too, I didn't. Once you're, a la all the rest of Star Wars we've seen, once you're on a table and there's a doctor with 4 arms and a headset doing surgery on you, I didn't think for a second that Nemec wasn't going to be fine.
Mhm. They needed to take him to the fixer on Tatooine.
Right. Well, that's what this guy was in my head, kind of thing. Like I thought,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, hell, like we've seen a lot of lightsaber wounds in the last episode go straight through guts and people just walking
True.
away from it.
Yeah. Alternate take on whether or not Skeen is actually a bad guy.
Mm,
In the previous episode, Nemec did make a point of telling Cassian, he claims that he's not listening, but I think I'm getting through to him.
right. And I
So,
mean, and this is it too. Like with that manifesto and the kid writing and reading it all the time and
yeah,
living and breathing it, you know, it's got to be it's got to weigh on you. So
yeah,
and again, we're not supposed to like Cass yet.
no,
He's a scumbag too.
yeah. So, we get to the terrible point here, and unfortunately, inside, uh, Vel is helping the doctor pull the sheet over Nemec, and she thanks him
Mm,
for trying, but his attempts were unsuccessful.
yeah.
Cassian enters with his blaster up, and the doctor's the first to notice. And he puts all four of his hands up. And Vel tells the doctor, "It's not for you." But Cassian says, "It's not what you think either." And then he offers the doctor 30,000 credits for a ship he sees outside. And Vel calls for Skeen, but Cassian tells her he's dead. And she then tells her that he wanted to take the money and leave you here. But she doesn't believe him. She doesn't believe he would do that. And Cassian tells her, you got to think on that. But Vel
Mm,
tells him, you're a disgusting bastard.
right.
And Cassian says, "I'm only taking my cut. I just want the price I was promised, and I'm leaving you the freighter and all the rest of it. My
Hmm.
job is done." And he advises her, you shouldn't stick around either. And from his pocket, he pulls out the Kyber and says, "Here, give this to your friend."
Yep.
He moves to leave, but Vel tells him, "Wait." And she picks up Nemec's manifesto and tells Cassian he wanted him to have it. And Cassian's like, "I don't want it." But Val says he insisted. So reluctantly, Cassian takes the book and leaves.
Yeah, that's a crazy moment. So,
Yeah,
he's not going to hit hyperspace somewhere and not sit down and read it, especially
yeah,
the stuff written about him,
yeah.
or the idea of him. Uh, and I wonder if Cassian's going to sort of take credit uh,
Hmm.
for, like nobody knew Nemec. He was just a idealistic kid. I mean,
Yeah,
certainly Lucian may have recruited him as well, or it may have been up to Val to recruit, all these other individuals. But certainly and I 100% agree with Wes. And I did the second that we started talking about it in the chat that there's some sort of um, part of the official statement of the rebellion here of
is going to
if
come
not
from this.
right, if not the actual constitution that Wes and I talked about from the role playing games and the actual New Republic Constitution. And I wonder if like how much of a scumbag is Cass yet. It's going to make its way to Rebel Command for sure. Um, will it be do you know what I mean? Like, I don't even mean he goes, look what I wrote, but it could be just misconstrued, and
Yeah, like,
therefore
oh, I got this from Cassian and he didn't correct them.
he becomes so much more integral to the entire Rebel Alliance than even he could possibly realize. Passing
Yeah.
on this manifesto.
Yeah. We do have a postcard here regarding Nemec from Wes, so I'll cue that one up now.
Perfect.
What can I say about this episode? Oh, Nemec, my boy Nemec. I knew you weren't going to make it. And wow, really sad to see him go, But on the plus side, I think I called it last week when I said I think that his manifesto was going to find its way into Cassian's hands. I didn't necessarily think it was going to be handed directly to him, but yet not surprising because, this episode really developed the relationship a little bit more between. We saw how crushed Nemec was last week when he learned that Cassian was just in it for the money. And then this week, that whole discussion about, when I can't sleep, I write. I wrote about you last night, not you specifically, but the use of mercenaries in an insurgency. So I really think, when I had proposed that we might be seeing a draft of the document that is sort of the codification of the Rebel Alliance, I absolutely am doubling down on that. It may not be the declaration of the New Republic, but it's certainly foundational towards what will become the New Republic. Now, getting back specifically to Nemec and his relationship with Cassian, like, it's really hard at this point not to see Nemec as the one half of Cassian's conscience sitting on his shoulder. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah. Now, off camera too, Wes, he had mentioned to me another point that he would have liked to make, that with Nemec being one half of that conscience, maybe Skeen represents the other side of that coin.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly possible. That all and we might never get that answer too,
No,
which
we
is
might
nice to have things interpreted. But um, my postulation that maybe Skeen necessarily wasn't the bad guy,
not. It
but
wasn't as
rather an opportunist.
yeah. We got one more postcard here from Wes about this particular scene, so I'll cue that one up.
I mean, this big moment where after the Nemec is tragically crushed between the credits, where Dr. Quadpaws is unable to save him. But Cassian, there's a small moment. I think if you weren't really looking at it, it's a dismissible thing, but it's not. Cassian makes a point to take the Kyber off and gives it to Vel and says, "Give it to your friend. Give this back to your friend." And that's hugely important because remember last week I proposed that there might be something between Vel and Luthen, and I still think that there's something to that. I also think that if Cassian didn't hand the Kyber back to Vel, Vel wasn't handing over the manifesto. I think she would have kept it for herself. She might have delivered it to Luthen herself. But now it's in the hands of our protagonist. It is the little conscience on Cassian's shoulder, and I do think he's going to read it. And I do think this is going to be the catalyst for Cassian to rethink his life. And aptly so.
Yep.
So, moving on here, we switch gears to Coruscant, and we find a whole bunch of people rushing through one of the hallways at the IBS building, and Deidre is part of it as well. And in the conference room, Major Partagaz tells everybody in the room, nobody's going home. Tell your families, tell your employees. Everyone here has to have all-star sector and planetary emergency retaliation plans ready to be presented to him by midnight. News of the heist has already reached them. in the Senate, we find Mon Mothma presenting her bill to help the Gormans, and she's basically giving it to a largely empty Senate room. But she notices some of her colleagues are kind of like getting a little bit antsy and
Mhm.
getting up and leaving. And she rushes and checks her own data pad and gives a look around, and she's kind of a mix between shocked and elated. So she knows what's just gone down.
Yeah. I have to say, I know you guys went in on Gorman a little bit on the previous episode, maybe even the second episode that I missed between the hurricane and whatever mild COVID I had or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But I got to double down on this event, and we might even get it, the actual event here. So I'm not sure. I didn't hear all of the episodes, so I'm not sure exactly where you went into detail in terms of the planet. But it's a Legends location of a massacre of civilians by Tarkin, and in Rebels, in the cartoon Rebels, in the third season, Mon Mothma mentions it to Hera Syndulla, as being the catalyst for her to leave the Senate completely and completely part ways with the Empire, uh, even superficially as a cover, and commit 100% to the rebellion. And I'm wondering, since we've sort of dipped into it twice now, if we're going to get that,
It's quite
uh,
possible.
right? And like Wes and I had talked about in the chat, um, does that preclude the next big bad Imperial officer or antagonist? And I had said I'm calling it now Tarkin, which would be great to see. But then Wes made a very good logical leap, saying that's probably Krennic. Um, I just thought that maybe Tarkin would work better. Krennic certainly the Rogue One flavor and the character already built up a living character for sure. But Krennic being sort of like more of a scientist in charge of that one project, he didn't fit for me to be like the next bad guy. And then Tarkin is that guy that is involved in the Gorman massacre in Legends, and I thought, what better way to bring in another legacy character on that level, and to really uh, up the ante, uh, because that now this is what Cassian had said in the very opening scene: "Be careful what you wish for," because clearly they have their attention now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call Tarkin, and let's see where the chips fall in the next 6 episodes.
Yeah. And it wouldn't even be like it's fan service either, because that would be a logical step, right?
Huge logical step, and another way to like flex that new tech that they've got.
Yeah. Uh, we cut across then to the gallery, and we find Luthen and Clea showing a piece of jewelry to a client, and citing it has a phrase on it in an old language that nobody remembers. And the client remarks how that's kind of sad, but he says, no, it can be quite liberating because it can mean whatever you want.
And
And then
he names the planet here that it's from, and I can't recall what planet it's from. It's also another planet in Rebel, or sorry, the Clone Wars. There's a Jedi temple that they go to,
oh,
an old Jedi temple on the planet that he mentions here,
I missed that
and
one.
so it's neat that the language can be anything that she wants it to. Um,
Yeah,
knowing how holy and stuff, like it's like
yeah,
that aristocratic view of art where any meaning that it really should have is superficial compared to the meaning that the buyer has.
we'll give it.
Right.
Yeah, but the other client that's in the gallery, he calls over and he's asking, "Do you have anything from Aldhani?" And it catches Luthen off guard, and he's like, "I'll have to check in the back." And as he makes his way to the back, we hear the guy, "Oh, I was just kidding. There was a big heist." And Luthen, he's already is on his way to the back, and once he's out of sight and out of earshot, he kind of gives this really like uh, a last episode, he was all, flustered and
Yes.
worried. And this is like a laugh of relief.
Yeah.
And he gives a
And
big sigh.
it's excellent acting and excellent, even better writing, because that's us. Because of the level of tension in this whole episode,
Yeah.
I dug into my couch with my arms. I dug into my legs with my hands, and I didn't let up until Lucian let me hear. And that's what that
Yeah.
whole scene's about. When he expresses his relief and joy, that's when I get to, and we as the audience get to express our relief and joy, because there was so much tension in this episode. It gave me a bit of a headache because I was gritting my teeth. I was like, oh,
Yep.
the whole way. And excellent writing, excellent acting in terms of showing us our catharsis.
Yeah. But as he sighs, we cut to black, and we know that the heist was somewhat of a success.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a postcard here from Wes about a couple questions, so I'm going to run that.
Perfect.
At the end of it all, man, we still got some holes to fill in. Do I think, we've spent more time with these characters than we spent with people like Tim and Bix in the first couple of episodes. I feel like we know these characters a little bit more, so I don't think we're done with Vel and Cinta. Cinta, by the way, who just kind of walked off into the night in that Imperial uniform. Hard to say whether did she ditch it on the way out, and is she just fading away with the locals? I don't know, but certainly Vel and Cinta as a couple are gonna try to be reunited at some point. But now we've got a conundrum because the credits are still sitting in the Rono freighter that Vel may or may not know how to fly, and Cassian has just bought a ship from Dr. Quadpaws, a ship that we haven't seen yet. So I'm very, me guys, I like technology and stuff in Star Wars, so I'll be very interested to see what kind of ship that he gets away in. But where are we going from here? Oh, and what happened to Gorn? Where is Gorn? Do we think Gorn has been taken into custody by what's left of the garrison? Certainly, it's questionable whether we'll see him again. I would like to. I think he's a very interesting character. But if we don't, well, he's certainly served his purpose. As he said to Commandant J-Hold, serving under you, I deserve worse. So maybe sweet death is sort of the end for him.
Yeah, I have to say, I'd have to say Gorn is dead, and I think Tamarin is dead too. And I think that in the weirdest way, this is the best possible cover for the rebels that they could get. Now it's a tragic outcome for sure, but the best possible outcome, because even the ISB, who seem to be beginning to take charge of the investigation, are going to find that it was current Imperials and ex-Imperials that were implicit in this. And I don't know that they're going to go beyond looking for an internal source to this. On the surface, it looks to be like, hey, this was just
guys on the inside looking
to get rich. It's just a money thing. And I think oddly enough, Deirdre and probably our young friend Karn, Gorn and Karn are so close together it drives me crazy. Are probably going to be the ones that are looking for this connection to this, where the rest of the Empire will be like, shut up, it was an inside job, you're not going to find a rebel connection. And I think that's where we're going to go with those two characters in the next little bit. Certainly, I think Cassian would head back to Ferrix. Maybe not, maybe not the smartest thing to do, but with 200,000 credits, maybe he thinks he can get Bix out.
Maybe.
or what have you, or certainly maybe just his mom. He's got to know that she's got to be in some trouble. They're looking for him.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if he didn't head back to Ferrex and we revisit those characters. But he, and then going back there would be easy for Lucien to find him.
Yeah.
He's not so good at hiding yet, I don't think.
No. But yeah, going forward, honestly, I don't know where we're gonna go because of the way he's left it here. Whether or not Cassian reads the manifesto in the very next episode and the light switches on, or is it going to be another drawn out 3-episode arc?
Right. Right.
Wes had a couple predictions for us though. So,
Perfect.
Anyway, guys, we're at the halfway point. We've got 6 more episodes to go. I don't know exactly where we're going from here. I know that all the time jump stuff isn't really coming until season 2. So we've got 6 more episodes to get back to some of those dangling threads that we've seen before, like the relationship between Cassian and Bix. We know from the Hasbro releases recently, we've seen Bix in an outfit in her action figure form that we haven't seen in the series yet. So presumably we're going back there, whether it's in some kind of memory. We got nothing from Cyril Karn this week. Cyril Karn, who had a huge moment last week where, of course, he's waiting to find out how Uncle Harlow is going to affect his immediate future, or not so immediate future. But yeah, and Luthen, after having his monumental stress out last week, seems to be in a better place this week as we close out the episode with him laughing as he has a major sigh of relief. So will Luthen and Vel reunite as father and daughter? We shall have to wait and find out. Will Cassian continue looking for his sister? I don't know. But certainly those are the things that are on my mind going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'd forgotten about Cassian's sister. I totally
line that just kind of got shoved to the side.
Yeah, I wonder if Bix is Cassian's sister.
I hope not. Just from the implications that they,
shared a bed
a while ago.
That's true.
There's a couple candid shots that were floating around this week on the internet based on this show. And it's kind of nice to see them having fun on set.
Love it. Star Wars coffee. Love it.
Yep. But as far as slides and whatnot, that's what we got for this week.
Fantastic.
We'll be back again next week and trying to do it all again.
Yeah, I think Wes is due back to our normal, or whatever normal is.
Yeah, he should be back next week.
You killed it this week, though, buddy.
We're still trying. But don't forget to like and subscribe. Helps out a ton. Doesn't cost anything.
Yeah. Check out our Patreon, which only costs a little, tiny little bit.
Yeah.
And you could tell us what to do a show on, and we might even listen to you.
We'll totally listen.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But we got one more here from Wes, and it's a goodbye from us. So I'll let him take us out.
Wicked.
So see you next week, folks.
Bye, Galaxy.
As always, guys, I hope you stick with us. Let us know what you think of what's going on, and what did you think of this week's episode? That's the eye. Oh, and by the way, the eye itself, was that a little anticlimactic for you guys? I mean, the eye thing, I know we got the look. Now, I'm watching the episode on a phone this week, so it's a much different presentation, but that thing was just kind of teeny-weeny. All right, maybe it was a bit of plot armor. Maybe not. Anyway, guys, from my undisclosed location here in Vacation Land, my name is Wes, and for Fandom Power, I will catch you on the next one. Bye for now.